This is my woodworking table. I bought it out of a mail order catalog about 35 years ago. This was before there was Amazon, before there was computers, before there was internet. And at the time it was a pretty big purchase for me, and it was kind of a piece of crap. It was really wet. As it shrunk, the top got all distorted, and I've replaned the top several times. These little blocks, some of these have come loose, and I've fixed them over the years. And I've replaced this tray once, so I'm gonna do a major rehab. That's gonna be my next little project. I'm gonna get rid of this. This is just a trap for dust, and extend the table this far with some sort of suitable lumber. I'm gonna get rid, well, this apron hangs down about 3/4 of an inch all the way around. And it's a problem when you're trying to clamp stuff to the table, because the clamp either wants to get halfway on there or halfway off of it. So I'm going to make this apron flush with the top. I'm going to remount this vise, which actually is a pretty good vise. It opens a half a turn with the handle, and then it slides in and out. But it doesn't fit right. And the little dog that you pull up to use in conjunction with your square holes is forever stuck. It's a pain to get it up. So one more thing, I have this metalworking vise. This is currently my metalworking vise for my home woodworking shop, and it's kind of a tinker toy, and I got a big one at the foundry that just sits out in the rain, so I'm gonna bring it and figure out a way to mount it removable so it'll be sturdy and I can use it, have a good vise at home. So new project, getting ready to start tearing this thing apart. This is interesting. I had planned on using sycamore to build up the edges to get the width correct, because I have a bunch of it and it's very hard to make furniture out of it. And the first board I pulled off is sycamore, so it looks like this is quite a mixed bag. It looks like there's some sycamore, some ash, some pecan. I guess they made it with like we used to order crane mats, mixed hardwoods. Mixed hardwoods, you just go in the forest and you cut down any hardwood you see and make things out of it. I guess this is what this company did. They just didn't dry it well enough. I was close to running these through the table saw, or running the whole top through my table saw to cut these up into straight pieces. I'm glad I didn't. There's lots of nails. I guess they used nails when they were putting it together on the pieces that didn't want to stay put. I don't know. So, a big decision. Since I have it apart, I think I'm going to eliminate these square holes. I didn't use them very often. Well, mainly because the dog on the vise was so hard to get up and down, but I just didn't use them very often, and I think there's too many of them. I might get rid of them and then buy those round dogs and drill round holes after the fact when I need them. And if I don't need them, I won't have any holes. So I think I'm going to knock all these blocks off. I'm going to trim these boards straight and start gluing them back together. The ones that haven't come apart yet, well, it's 35 years old. If they haven't come apart yet, they probably are not going to. I'm not going to split it up into every single board. So I pretty much cut the top all the way up. There aren't many boards that I haven't messed with. Well, I don't know, maybe half of them. So now when I push them together tight, I got 20 inches and I'm shooting for 30. So I pulled some my first few sycamore boards out the attic. I got an inch of dust on them, and I'll thickness these, plane these, and start cutting them and fitting them. And I probably will put these new boards between the old boards. I'm not sure why. Just mix them up a little bit. Spent quite a bit of time on the back end of the table saw and the planer on this project, and I'm just going to show this a little bit because it's pretty boring to watch somebody shove boards to a planer or a table saw. No fancy camera angles, just I'm going to show this, and then that'll be it for this video. So I planed those 4 boards that I pulled down from the attic, and then I ripped them to the width, which is 2 1/8. And now I'm going to go and cut them to length. Some of them may be short. I might have to splice them, but I may have enough extras. Just I'm going to use one of the old boards as a pattern. I'm going to cut them all to length. Okay, so I got my batch of rips cut to length. A couple of them are going to be spliced because they're not quite long enough, but that's okay to be like butcher blocky. And then I decided I want to put some all thread rods through the tabletop to help hold it together for the long run. It's raining pretty good. And it's hard to drill 30 inches through a block of wood, but I can drill each little group separately, each little couple of boards. So what I did was I made a guide. I'm going to clamp this and drill through these holes and drill each little section separately and do that before I glue them together. I'm not going to use this to clamp the glue, but I'm going to use this to put on after the fact, just for a little bit of insurance, because I abuse this top pretty hard, so it needs to be strong. So even though these boards have been clamped and glued together for 30 something years, 35 years, I still got to, they still spring. They still sprung when I cut them loose. I had to put the clamps on to get them lined up so I can get the holes in the right place. My drill battery says enough for now, but I got plenty enough drilled where I can do a glue up. If I glue them up in 10-inch strips, 3 10-inch strips, then I can run them through the thickness planer and get them cleaned up a little bit. I'm going to start gluing, and by the time I get a set glued up, the battery should be charged back up. I can finish drilling. I might get 2 sets glued up today. Okay, we've got a dry clamp, just to adjust all the clamps and make sure I got a plan. I'm going to take it back apart, and we're going to put lots of glue on there, just using yellow glue, woodworker's glue. I'm going to go put some water in this glue. It's too pasty. It's too old. Okay, the tabletop is glued back together in rough thirds, close enough so I can get them through the planer. Two there, and one there. And I don't know if I'd call this woodwork, it's just plain old work. It's very physical, dealing with these heavy boards and all the clamps and the torque you got to put on them, but we got them together. So I ended up putting these boards with the little clamps to straighten everything out because everything had so many curves. It was about impossible to get them all lined up. But I have to take them off now because they're not protected. I don't want to glue them onto the boards. So I can take them off. Nothing's going to move. The clamps are very, very tight. So the clamps are off. So now I have 3 nice chunks of hardwood. 2/3 original workbench and 1/3 new all sycamore. And the shop's cleaned up a little bit. And it just turned 7:30, so I'm free to make noise. I'm going to run these through the thickness planer and bring them all down to the same thickness. Clean them up a little bit. So run them 3 hunks of hardwood through the planer. We're down to just under 2 inches thick, which is plenty. And my edges are not really straight, which is what you kind of expect when you glue a bunch of junk together. So I'm going to run them through the table saw again to get these lined up a little better, and then I'm going to glue them together and then flip it over and mount the vise. I got lucky. I just hit a few little pieces of metal with the planer. It's kind of surprising after 34 years of use. I was thinking there's going to be more hidden in there, but it did good. Okay, I passed them all through the table saw and just cut like a 1/16 of an inch off of each edge just to kind of straighten them and square them up. And one clamp is able to pull them up tight. So I was thinking of using epoxy because of its gap filling abilities, but it fits so good. I'm going with we're going to yellow glue it together, and I'm kind of done for I'm going to glue this with yellow glue and let it cure, and then I'm going to take some boards and fill this little gap right here. This was where the little tool trough stepped down, so I'll just make that flat. Nothing special, just whatever kind of wood I can find. So I'm drilling the hole to recess the nut and washer that's going to go on the all-thread rod. And I found the size I wanted. I drilled a hole in a piece of scrap wood and I clamped the scrap wood there. That'll keep the bit from wobbling around. And the depth, I did some measurement and marked it on here. So let's drill a hole and see how long my drill lasts. We got the countersunk drilled at each end. That went fine. And I thought I had a 1/2 inch bit this long here at the house, but it's a 3/8 bit. I would have welded one. I was just at the foundry. But I got an alignment issue. It doesn't quite line up. I can get this bit past this joint. I can come from the other way past this joint, but it's got like a little hump in it. So I'm fixing to try to pound this thing through there. I hope it doesn't like get stuck forever and it'd be a big issue. Almost there. what I'm talking about.
Come out the other end. Just got to do that 3 more times. I'll cut the length in place. I cut the rods a little long. I'm going to have to cut them twice. Once to be able to get the socket wrench in there to tighten it up, and then I'll have to cut it once more to get it flush or below the surface, maybe a little bit. Plug it in. That's what I'm talking about.
This is number 4 of 4, and I think the hammer was getting tired because it kept kind of messing up.
So slid the tabletop over onto the original legs, which are not original legs. I made these legs to replace the original legs. And I marked the center of where the vise goes on the bottom of the table. So I'm going to flip it over and mount the vise so it can use these same 3 holes. When I flipped the table over, I realized how out of square my skill saw cut this end. And that's not good because this is the face that the vise clamps up against. So I got my router set up with a guide to trim a little bit. My bit is pretty iffy, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to cut it or just make a lot of noise and a lot of smoke. Give it a shot. So both ends are squared up with the router, and the vise
mechanism is mounted, and it actually had 4 wood screws holding it in on there when I originally flipped it over, and that's amazing because I pretty abused that vise over the years, and they never let go. I replaced them with lag screws so I can abuse it even more. So the half nut that makes the vise work, it's got a little wear in it, and it's bronze. It's a cast iron thing, but it's got bronze threads in it, and I don't see how they come out. But anyway, it's going to last till it breaks, and then we'll get a new one. I don't think there's anything in there I can fix. So, there's not much to this thing. That's it. When you crank it, the thing rolls over and the threads catch, and when you uncrank it frees up. There's a little nut I need to put at the end of this rod to keep it from falling out on the floor. The lag screws holding the top down were going in really hard, and ended up breaking one. So I went to the grinder and just cut a little face on it, and huge difference. They're going in like butter now. It's amazing what that little bitty sharp leading edge will do. The workbench top is now back to being a workbench top. It is a complete top. It is bolted down, and it is super sturdy, and that's all I ask. I'm not going to go over it with a straight edge and a feeler gauge and try to hand plane it to 1/1000th of an inch. It's just not the way I work. I don't care about that. And also I'm outside, so the humidity changes drastically from day to day. I just want something relatively flat and strong, and I have that. And this video is getting long, so we'll wrap it up, and I'll make a follow-up video. I have to replace this, the jaws for that vise, and I have a big metalworking vise at the foundry, and I want to make some sort of quick connect where I can set it up and use it and then take it back down. And I'm not really sure how to do that or how I'm going to do that yet, but this has been a good 3 or 4 day little project. Big improvement. Thanks for watching.